You tilt your head with puzzlement. Betrothed? Then turn to Izuku, who seemed rather pale, for clarification. Betrothed is when people get married, right? You jolted as Katsuki lunged towards Katai, snatching his collar in a choking grip. "He's fucking full of shit," he snarled. Katai glared back, protesting. "I am being truthful. Why else would I spend my entire life searching for them?" In all honesty, you didn't quite understand the shift in the atmosphere at the mention of your betrothal. Izuku had not really discussed that topic with you, other than a short mention years ago when they were children. Was it something worth Katsuki's rush of anger, or how shaken Izuku seemed to be? However, the idea that someone had been looking for you, when you'd otherwise assumed you alone, was all that was left of your tribe, struck deep into the grief you had buried. "Katsuki, let him go. We don't know that he's lying," you say, tiring a little at his antics. You were not as versed in dealing with Katsuki's temper as you had been. "And we don't know that he's not," he fired back. "He is the last person from my tribe," you shout. "Whether what he says is true or not, he knows things about me. Things we've only speculated about for years. Let him speak." Reluctantly, Katsuki abided by your wish, but his taunt muscles brimmed with bridled vehemence. You eye him warily, but address Katai. "I will be honest, I don't quite understand the gravity of this situation." Katai composed himself, adjusting his clothes as he spoke. "I understand." He threw a snide glance at Katsuki before meeting your eyes. "And I would be happy to explain it to you. You could come with me, and I'll tell you all about our tribe, our history, our people, your parents." He offered all the things you longed to know on a silver platter, and your eagerness shone through. You reached for the tray like a child being offered sweets, with no restraint or forethought. Your agreement was on the tip of your tongue, but Izuku interjected. I don't think that's a good idea." He stepped forward firmly between you and Katai. "I don't mean to offend you, but we've only just met. It would not be wise of us to blindly trust you." You swallowed and withdrew at Izuku's logic, disappointment brewing in your heart. "But I think we can arrange another meeting, if that's all right with you, puppy." "Deku!" Katsuki objected, but Izuku only shot him a quailing look before looking to you for your answer. You could tell that he was uncomfortable with even the idea he offered. Allowing someone else, a stranger, to be near you when they'd persistently kept away from every other human for all this time. But Izuku understood how you'd yearn to know of your origins, could see your hopes igniting in your eyes. You nod, displaying your gratefulness. "I think that's a good idea." Katai's smile was slow to return. Perhaps he disliked having to wait for you after just finding you. But he agreed easily enough. "Of course, whatever makes you feel comfortable, Celestial." "How about tomorrow at sunset?" Izuku suggested, posing the question more to you than Katai. "There's a small waterfall not far from here, towards the west. Is that convenient for you?" you add. "I believe I passed it on my way here. I will meet you there at sunset," he confirmed, gladly, grinning like someone who had discovered a great treasure. It was a little disconcerting, but you imagined that Katai, who had found the person he had painstakingly searched for, may view you as a precious, lost treasure. You turn away from his pressured stare and to a still fuming Katsuki. "Please don't kill him when we're gone." Katsuki glared back, his jaw clenched. "This is a bad idea." You soften at his concern. I can't not try, you placate imploringly. You shoot a last awkward smile to Katai and shift before Izuku. In the next moment, you were bounding through the trees, faster than any living creature in the world. Katsuki turned to Katai, his distaste dripping off him like lava trickling down a volcano. You're not fooling anyone, paleface. Why don't you tell me what you really want? Katai paid him an indignant glance, repeating like a script he'd rehearsed. All I've ever wanted is to find the Celestial, and now I have. He stared after you, a dreamlike expression on his face. And I will not let you barbarians get in my way. He turned on his heel and whistled loudly. Katsuki grabbed onto his shoulder, yanking him back. Do you really think they'll marry you? You can't just show up here making demands and disrupting their life. Katai side-eyed him, seeming a lot less bothered by Katsuki's aggression. Do you wish to marry them? Katsuki startled at the question, shoving Katai back with the shock of his statement. What? No! Katai eyed him unimpressed. Hoofs could be heard approaching, and not long after, a grey steed appeared through the shrubbery. Katai took hold of the horse's reins and swiftly saddled its back. I don't intend to force the Celestial to honor their parents' vow, but it is still a wish of mine. The last dying wish of my father was for me and them to be together. I should hope you forget whatever feeling you have for them now, before I win their affection. Katsuki scoffed. You won't get that mutt to do anything. They're the most stubborn person you'll ever meet. They'll never marry you. Katai grinned. To be seen, he said, before he ushered the horse away. Katsuki burned the grass where the horse treaded with his gaze, muttering under his breath, Fuck that. You leaped over the boulder and into our place, a weighty bird hanging from your teeth. You and Izuku had intended to hunt to build up your reserves again, but considering the shock of the day, this would suffice for supper. You allow Izuku to slide off you before dropping the bird into his waiting arms and shifting back. You were both quiet as the hefty bird was cleaned and the fire prepped. You were stunned from the encounter, but jittery thoughts bombarded your mind. Finally, after all these years, you were able to put a name to your tribe of origin, the place you would have belonged had tragedy not struck. Kakureta. You searched within yourself to find meaning in the heritage you had lost, but held in your hands only ashes of incinerated memories. The memories of before you'd met Izuku and Katsuki were reduced to flashes of fire, screams, and the panic of escaping. Despite being handed with a reminder, you could not summon a connection. You tried to reassure yourself that once Katai began recounting their memories, envisioning them would be easier. You hoped you could pull together a picture of your parents' faces, at the very least. But that wasn't all Katai was there for. It was obvious by how he spoke that their marriage had been a driving force in finding you, that it was something he had desired as much as you had desired answers. What did marriage really mean? Izuku had mentioned it once, in a casual chat about 2 tribe members who had joined in name. But was that all marriage was? As Izuku places 2 sticks skewered with poultry over the fire, you ask, abruptly, Izu, what is marriage like? Izuku's head snaps up, surprised. His thoughts had likely been running wild as well. It's nice, I guess, he spluttered out. I didn't really get to witness my parents' marriage, but Kachan's parents seem happy enough. You hop into your nest, placing your head upon your crossed arms, and questioned curiously. So, marriage is just about family? Only parents get married? Well, more often than not, you get married first and then you have a child to make a family. Yes, Izuku explained as he rotated the meat. How does the child happen? You had asked flippantly, but faltered once Izuku's face reddened. Well, you see, why are you so nervous? And so red? Are you getting a fever? You lean forward to check his temperature, but he waves you off. No, it's not a fever. The topic is just a bit embarrassing, he says, with his gaze pointedly at the fire. Oh, you say as you withdraw. You remember a few months ago when you'd confronted Katsuki about Izuku's whereabouts, and he'd mentioned things that Izuku didn't teach you. You never thought it was important, until now. Should you keep pushing even though it made Izuku uncomfortable? Izuku exhaled. But you should know. He didn't look at you as he spoke. When two people come together, or well, a man and a woman, I guess, they perform this act that begins the growth of a baby. You consider his explanation and follow up. Like a ritual? No, Izuku inhaled hastily and blew out his words in one breath. Do you remember that time we saw those two wild horses near to the mountain range? You nod, recalling them. You mean the time that I asked you what they were doing and you got all flustered and fell into the river? Izuku shivered at the memory. It had been close to the apex of winter, and the water had been freezing. Yes, that time. People do that, and they have a child. Okay, you say as you try to form an image to mirror what you'd seen to humans, but the limbs were a bit difficult to place. As you consider, you realize, hey, Izuku, you're a man. Izuku glances up with a fond smile. I'm glad you noticed. You have similar parts to the horse on top, you comment, innocuously, pointing at Izuku's private area. What's it called? Izuku's skin flamed to resemble poisonous red berries. He smothered his face in his hand. Oh gods, please kill me. You frown, sinking a bit into your nest, not understanding why this was so difficult for Izuku to talk about. You thought they could talk about anything, yet it didn't feel right to agitate him like this. We don't have to talk about it, you offer, through your disappointment. Izuku peeked through his fingers and grimaced. No, we do. I should have told you about this a long time ago. But can I ask? He hesitated. Are you asking these questions because you're considering marrying Katai? No, of course not, you tell Izuku, surprised. I just met him. How can I spend my life with him? I couldn't imagine spending my life with anyone but you. You say honestly, remembering a time when you had thought Katsuki, Izuku, and yourself would be together until the end of days, and even beyond. Izuku's eyes widened, and he stared quietly in awe. Your eyes flicked to the bird meat, and back to him with puzzlement. Izu? The meat is burning, you mentioned gently. Izuku jolted and hurried to move the meat from the fire. Right, sorry. He takes a skewer and blows some of the steam off before handing it to you. You nibble carefully. I just want to understand more about why my parents wanted me to marry him. I mean, it's a bit weird, right? Not knowing what kind of person he'll become, but wanting me to spend the rest of my life with him? Would Katai and I be able to make children? Izuku choked and began coughing harshly. You hand him some water in alarm. Izu, are you okay? Yes, he struggled out after downing some water. Do we have any moonshine left? You frown. We haven't made for a couple months. Right, Izuku said, composing himself. I'm not sure if you and Katai would be able to have children. Everybody's body is different. And does a man carry the child or the woman? It's usually the one with the womanly parts. Would you and I be able to make one? Izuku stalled so suddenly, you thought he'd been paralyzed by your question. He reached for the water again, and you handed it to him. He chugged down a few gulps, and then wiped his mouth. He took a deep breath before facing you again with a nervous smile. How about we talk about this after we eat? I'll draw some pictures and explain how the baby is made. You nodded hesitantly, a little worried that this topic may make Izuku shut down with how he was acting. Okay. Despite his reluctance and heated face, Izuku persisted. He explained the process and mechanics of how the baby was made, with some detailed sketches that he drew like a puppet being forced to move by a puppeteer. You followed along impassively, not quite understanding what about this act caused Izuku's overreaction. There were always customs and traditions amongst humans that didn't make sense to you, and you wondered why this was a big deal. Finally, Izuku and you retreat to the nest, the late night drawing out their fatigue. Izuku traced spiraling patterns onto your back, an unconscious habit he'd have sometimes from when they were children, to help you sleep. You knew without needing to look behind that his eyes were already closed, but you asked another question. Izuku, can only men and women get married? No, any two people who love each other can get married, he mumbled. When I was younger, I wanted to marry Kachan. You roll over to face him with interest. Really? He peeked one eye open to view your eagerness and smiled fondly. His hand found its way to your hair, apparently needing to be busy somewhere. We even had a little wedding before we met you. Our mothers thought it was adorable. He'd made me a flower crown and gifted me a smooth rock with engraved patterns on it. You furrow your eyebrows. I actually remember that rock. You showed it to me a long time ago. Izuku hummed. But I lost it a while ago. I wonder where it is, you say absent-mindedly. It was difficult to picture a time when you were not a part of Izuku's life. You wonder if you had been there. Would the three of you get married? Can we get married, Izuku? Izuku's eyes opened halfway. He's quiet as he stares consideringly, and a little sad. That's not really how marriage works. What do you mean? Well, his hand pauses in your hair. Marriage is for people who love each other. You pout. We do love each other. Izuku chuckled softly. True, but you have to be in love with someone. What's the difference? Izuku's hand resumes in your hair, and his eyes follow the movement. Being in love is when you choose someone to care for, to cherish, to adore, and it's not something you can decide on. When you're in love, your heart makes those decisions for you, while your brain will tell you otherwise. It's when you see that person and the world around you becomes white noise, because only that person matters in the moment. It's someone who makes you feel like every challenge is manageable, as long as they are by your side. You consider his description with puzzlement. But Izuku, I feel all those things for you. I don't understand why we can't get married. A lone mist floated in Izuku's eyes. You feel that way because I'm the only person you know. You might feel differently once you get to know Katai. You might want to marry him, and that's okay too. Just, get to know him before. You turn around abruptly, huffing. Just say you don't want to marry me, but you'd marry Katsuki of all people. Izuku sighed, an adoring smile playing on his lips, as he carefully placed his arm around you and moved a little closer. You were stiff in his hold, your eyes squeezed shut and your head purposefully turned away. Izuku placed his head atop yours, on the layered blankets, and his hand ghosted over your fingertips. We don't have to get married, puppy. I already promised you that I will never leave you. No matter what you decide, I will always be here for you. You relaxed a little and clasped onto his hand firmly. Izuku, I won't choose Katai over you. I just met him. I know that, puppy, Izuku started. Then stop acting like it's something already decided. You say forcefully. Izuku circled his fingers around your palm. I'm sorry. I guess I'm a little nervous about this. Me too, you admit. After all this time for him to just appear, it seems too good to be true. Izuku squeezed your hand. At least we'll get the answers we've always wanted. Should I bring my notebook with me? I think that's a good idea, you tell Izuku drowsily, the tracing finally wearing you down. We'll be okay no matter what, right? You ask as sleep starts to take you. Of course, puppy. Forever. Izuku watched you doze off but could not bring himself to sleep. His mind whirled with thoughts of this new arrival and what his intentions might be. While he may be as eager as you to know more, he knew it wasn't in anyone's best interest to be too trusting. He would make sure to keep you safe. You did not expect Katai to be awaiting your arrival next to the babble of water. You'd even hoped he would be late to give you a few moments to calm your nerves. He smiled widely as you approached, but it only seemed to intensify your anxiety. Still, you leaned down, allowing Izuku to climb off before shifting, and returned his smile politely. Hi, you're early? Katai glanced at Izuku and back. I just couldn't wait to see you again. And you brought your friend? You tilt your head with puzzlement. Why wouldn't I? You ask lightly. You consider that with the apprehension of the previous day, there had been no formal introduction for Izuku. Perhaps that was what Katai was expecting. That was customary when meeting new people, right? I don't think we all properly met yesterday. You introduced yourself, and well, you know me, I guess. Let me introduce you to my closest person. You hold onto Izuku's arm. This is my best friend, Midoriya Izuku. My family, actually. Izuku had noticed Katai's disappointment at the sight of him, and it did not sit well that Katai was expecting you to come alone. But, despite his feelings, he acknowledged that this was important to you, and greeted Katai courteously. We have a lot to learn from you, Katai-san. Katai inclined his head. I am grateful for you for taking care of the Celestial. In my absence? Will your other friend be joining as well? Izuku narrowed his eyes. He did not like how Katai emphasized the latter. Izuku is the best, and no, Katsuki wouldn't be interested in this. You explain. Actually, we were hoping that we could look for something while we talk. Izuku and I thought it would make things less awkward if we do something. Katai agreed gracefully. Whatever makes you feel comfortable, Celestial. It would make me feel more comfortable if you stopped referring to me with such reverence in that name, you thought, but chose not to voice it. You didn't think Katai would be capable of calling you anything else. We brought a picture, Izuku said, holding up his drawing of a 5-petal flower with darker colorings on its inner parts. It's light blue and lilac. Katai smiled tightly at Izuku. Got it. Well, should we start? You suggested anxiously. I think we'll find them more upstream. Yes, Celestial. Katai waited for you to lead the way. Izuku grabbed onto your hand and walked forward, prompting you to move. Katai followed at your side. It is quiet for some time, with only the sound of rushing water and the songbirds overhead, before Izuku nudged you. You nodded back, fighting back nervousness, and began. I suppose I should ask you some questions? Katai's eyes were welcoming as he glanced at you. Ask away. Okay, you say, and ask your first question. We have been betrothed since we were born? Since you were born. I am 5 summers your senior. And what would that have meant for us? Would we have started a family? Katai seemed taken aback by your line of questioning, and you glance at Izuku for reassurance. His smile is kind, and he exhales sheepishly. You must forgive their bluntness. Social conduct is not something one needs to learn when they're on their own, and Poppy has been on their own for a long time. Katai composed himself. Understood. He acknowledges Izuku shortly, and proceeded to answer your question. We would have started a family, perhaps even when we got to this age, had the attack not occurred. In fact, it was something we talked about often. That rubbed Izuku the wrong way, especially considering the age gap between you and Katai. While it may not matter much now, you had been very young at the time of the attack. Too young to be discussing children. Were we close before? You asked. Katai's lips quirked warmly, as though remembering a past he longed for. Very. You saddened at that. You had Izuku and Katsuki to fill the gaps of your loss. But Katai had been on his own, and with your limited memory, you could not be much of a lifeline to their lost tribe. I'm sorry I don't remember you, you say, genuinely contrite. Katai shook his head with protest. You've been through something unimaginable. I prefer that you don't remember the horrors of that day, even if it means my memories are added to that. I am happy to have found you now. You were glad he was not holding it against you. What about my parents? If we were betrothed, you must have known them well? We were acquainted, of course. I was often invited to your home so that we could grow close. They treated me like a son. They were very kind people, and they loved you very much. They couldn't be prouder to have the Celestial in your family. That filled you with mixed emotions. You wanted to be happy to hear Katai's confirmation of your parents' love, but his words felt empty. Perhaps when you have no solid memories of your parents, they become strangers. And how could the love of a stranger hold any value to you? Izuku squeezed your hand, his eyes imploring you. You assure him with a shake of your head. Were you there when they died? You question. No. I went looking for you as soon as I saw the fire spreading. Have you been on your own this entire time? Izuku asked curiously. Katai shot him a side-eye, like he wished Izuku pretended not to be there. However, reluctantly, he answered. I gathered a convoy of sorts. We do trade as we travel from town to town. It has been helpful for my travels and in finding you, Celestial. What do you trade? Izuku inquired further. Nothing too valuable. This and that to get us by, he answered vaguely. Izuku's eyebrows knitted, and he opened his mouth, but stopped when you snapped your head to the side suddenly. You stared at the bushes to their left, frowning before turning away and looking up. I found your flowers, you say, as casually as you could manage. Izuku's eyes questioned your strange behavior, but he didn't voice it. Instead, he followed your gaze to the steep bank they had reached. High among the rocky surface was the flower Izuku sought, standing proudly and tauntingly between the difficult cracks. Izuku pouted. Of course they have to be somewhere hard to reach. That's okay, Izu. I'll get it for you, you offer helpfully. You don't wait for his answer and proceed to climb the rough terrain with an inhuman agility, picking flowers as you go. They're as amazing as I always imagined, Katai breathes in awe. Izuku, who had been admiring you with fondness, glanced over at Katai. His stare was fixed on you, the glinting veneration bringing discomfort to Izuku. He couldn't pin the feeling to a reason, but narrowed it down to the glint in Katai's eyes. It was less admiring and more idolizing. Izuku reasoned that, in a sense, you, or well, the celestial spirit, must have been akin to a deity to your former tribe, so it was natural to view you as such. They've always been amazing, Izuku mentioned, turning his gaze back to you. In more ways than one. And you have them at your beck and call. Izuku jerked his head to Katai, astounded by his strange statement. Excuse me? I just meant how easily they leaped to action because you wanted those flowers, Katai says, his voice even but underlying with reproach. I wouldn't put it that way, Izuku said, taken aback. We help each other. It's like they said, we're family. We use our strengths to make up for the other's shortcomings. For example, Poppy doesn't particularly like to cook, so I do it. I can't really hunt, and they take care of that. Katai did not respond to Izuku's rebuttal. How long have you and the Celestial been close? Close? Izuku asked cautiously. You both seem inseparable, Katai commented with disapproval. You've only known us for 2 days, Izuku interjected, and yet it's clear to me that you may view them as more than family. Izuku spluttered. I don't know what you're implying, but we are family. Katai scoffed, but did not continue the conversation. His demeanor changed the instant you climbed back down. Is this enough, Izu? You ask, holding out a bunch of flowers. Izuku shot Katai another look, utterly perplexed by his blunt interrogation, but that was something he would discuss with you in the privacy of our place. Yes, puppy, this is more than enough. Thank you. Izuku raised his hand to dust a little crumbled sand from your hair. However, Katai was quicker. He brushed it off with a lingering hand. Celestial, you have some dirt in your hair. Allow me to get it out. Oh, thank you, you say, a little surprised, but tilt your head down to allow him to remove the dirt. Well, Midoriya-san, do you need anything else but those flowers? Katai asked, an obliging acquaintance possessing him. You look at Izuku expectantly. His gaze moved from Katai's hand brushing away at invisible dirt, and back to your unassuming stare. He was unnerved by the amount of enmity welling at the base of his throat at the sight of Katai's forward and casual touch, something he seemed too comfortable doing. However, Izuku swallowed his hostility, answering simply, as he hoped for time to hasten the day along. I don't believe I need anything more from you today. You tilted your head quizzically, but at Izuku's subtle shake, you did not voice a question, knowing that whatever needed to be discussed would be alone.